Just a second here. Jim Collison from Gallup. We're here at the Heartland Developer Conference in the fall of 2014. I'm here with Jim Welborn. And Jim, good to see you here. Jim and I did some work with Oracle before, although we're not going to talk about any Oracle in this discussion. But Jim, thanks for taking a few minutes to come out and be a part of the bonus content for the conference. It's good.
For having me.
Let's get to know you a little bit, your background, kind of where you're from, what you do, who you work for now, and then we'll dive into your session a little bit.
Okay. Well, I'm a software developer. I've worked in Omaha now for 27 years. Currently working for Capstone Consulting, primarily Java developer, Java technologies, on a big contract. I'm lead architect for a contract with the state of Nebraska, the probation administration office out of the state. And so we have a very, very good contract going with that. I've been with Capstone about 18 months now. But I've worked for a lot of companies in town over the last 27 years.
Yeah, and if you've been in Omaha any length of time, you know it's a small IT community.
A very small town with a long memory.
It is. You're either you're working with somebody, or you've worked with them in the past. And actually, I like that. I mean, I like that. It's not so small that it's inbred, but it's big enough that you kind of know everybody and you run into people again. So good to run into you again. Talk a little bit about your session, and let's just kind of a high-level overview of what you covered, and I'll ask you some questions as we go.
Okay. Well, so last year at the conference, I was introduced to the Angular JS technologies, and was really, really curious about those. Doing a lot of web development, a lot of JavaScript, jQuery. Now I'm doing Java server faces, doing a lot of the front end type, user interface web development. Angular JS just was a hot topic.
Yeah,
so I started
still kind of is.
It is, and it's been a real big topic.
A lot of sessions here at this conference this time. Yeah, if you want a JavaScript, this was the conference to come to.
I know.
Yeah,
But when I decided on the topic of my discussion this time, I decided to hit the real-time database, which is more of the back end as a service, which there's several out there, but Firebase was the one that really jumped out at me. So I started looking at Firebase, and then Angular Fire, and then Angular JS, the three technologies together to build real-time applications. And so in our session, we actually used those three technologies and built a real-time application, which turned out to be an evaluation application on evaluate us as we go and show the results live, like you're on The Voice or something, and we're actually seeing the results as they come in. And worked for the most part. We really we had a great turnout. I think it was a very successful class.
Talk a little bit about those technologies. What made you lean towards those? So what in those was what originally drew you? Why those and not something else?
Well, I was drawn to the fact that right now there's a lot of internet technologies that are just kind of they're new, they're taking off, and one of the things that's just always really I was curious about was real-time applications, and like any kind of scoring or things that would take like dedicated hardware, dedicated software to run. Why can't I convert, like, say, an existing web application to start taking advantage of these? And Firebase just caught. I mean, I actually started using Firebase on my own about I don't know, maybe a year ago, before I even knew Angular. It's kind of what even brought me into the Angular technologies. But I was just amazed at the fact that I could be drawing something on my smartphone, and somebody else could be drawing on it at the same time, and we could be actually collaborating on the same thing in real time. And when I saw a lot of those application demonstrations, it was a new technology to me. So this is one case where it was just my own curiosity that brought me into it. It's not something that I've been working on. Mostly learned all of this on my own in the last 6 months.
Yeah. Real-time collaboration is certainly changing the face of the way we collaborate. When we talk about just being able to do that, of course, I think I was introduced to it first through Google Docs. They were kind of on the edge of this, and the idea of being able to, with podcasting, to be able to sharing a document in real time. Absolutely. Updating that document as we're talking a couple years ago. That was just amazing.
I know.
What else are you seeing in that space besides just document sharing? Because that's what we think of. You mentioned drawing. In your session, you did a survey at the end. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it was actually an evaluation app. We called it Eval Me, but it was an application that we could actually add questions, and audience members could log in with their name. Now they have Firebase has full user authentication, password, and everything. We didn't add any of that. They could add in with their name, and then they could give their a ranking, like a score. We had a 1 to 10 score, and then what we did is we showed up on the screen the scores as they came in live, and then we could do things like change the question or add a question, and as we did that, they would actually be updated on their iPhone, on their smartphone. So then they could, like we could add a question, change the wording of a question. So it's real time both ways. We were looking at the real time, aspect of it from our side. They're looking at it from their side. I see that as I like to use the example of a golf leaderboard, for instance.
Yeah, sure.
For instance, if you're, like right now, we're used to seeing those kind of things on TV.
Yeah.
Maybe the very large companies are doing very large solutions, but now for a very easy application using AngularJS, I mean, literally a dozen lines of code, I can have that technology on my smartphone.
Sure.
And I see that as being, that's what brought me in too. But I see a lot of applications, dashboard applications, that I don't know how to word it. The average company, small business could afford.
Sure.
That they would never consider now, because it's just been too hard to be able to afford that kind of a solution.
So what is it about the framework that makes that so easy? And I don't know if framework's the right terminology.
It is a good word.
What is it? Is it because there's so much of that interaction already built in that you can take advantage of it right away?
And the Firebase, which is the back, they call it the backend as a service, BaaS. You've seen the software as a service, platform as a service. Well, this is backend as a service, and it's an entire web hosting solution. So, like before, I don't know how much you've done it, but if you've stood up a web server, maybe a Tomcat server, or a Glassfish server, or any of those servers, you know how hard it is. You have a lot of work to do. With Firebase, we actually did it literally in less than 5 minutes. We did, you have like a Firebase init, Firebase deploy, and you don't have, you have a running web server, or web server. You don't have to go through all of that. And I think that was the next thing that made it, it was like in the cloud, but it not only was in the cloud, but I didn't have to worry about deployment directory, a WAR file, a port number, all the things that you normally have to do.
Yeah.
It literally ran itself. And it, it was had a multi-tier, solution. It's a free service, web hosting that starts out in the space, and then you can go with the pro version. You can go from there to buy licensed versions of it. But I think it really opened my eyes to where we're going in the cloud right now. The back end as a service. I could run out of my WebStorm. I use IntelliJ WebStorm. I could run everything out of that and not even have to worry about, not even write one single line of server-side code to run this this entire thing that we built today. And we built this really from scratch today in terms of this entire application. From the other thing, I guess, to answer this a little long way, is the newer technologies with all the scaffolding and everything, where you can have, you can set up a template and have it generate all the code that you need, so that I'm only worried about my own screens, my own customizations that I have to do. All that other stuff is kind of left in the background. You don't have to worry about it. And anybody that's been around as long as we have, I guess.
Yeah, you've been doing it from scratch for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, that would be 90%, 95% of the effort would be to set up all the back-end stuff.
Right.
And we always wondered, when do we get to start coding, because we've done all of the scaffolding ourselves.
Right. All the installs, making sure the hardware is working right, optimize the NIC cards.
So we're always worried about plumbing,
I know.
The plumbing.
When can I put the drywall on?
That's right. That's very true.
It's 90% structure and 10%.
So away.
It really is, isn't it? Can I deploy this through like an Amazon or an Azure? Are those setups available on either one of those platforms? Do you know?
I haven't used them myself, but I have. there's some new ones like I know Amazon, for instance, is a very good platform as a service. There's a one out there called Heroku, which is extremely good, but none of them so far have been two commands that I've seen with Firebase.
Okay. Well, and it's just interesting that the cloud is here. It's here to stay. You can't ignore it anymore. And so there's a lot of those things going on. Very interesting. Talk a little bit about the demo. You kind of alluded to it earlier, but what did you hope to get through with your demo there?
Well, we really wanted people to get a feel for, and we kind of saw the light bulb come on when people actually were, like we told them, when you enter your score, make sure you put a name in that you'll recognize, because, we had 150 people in the room. We want to make sure that they saw their own score, but as they did it, they could see the scores actually appear, and we had an average, so you could see the number changing as people were doing it.
Nice.
We did learn that Wi-Fi has limitations. And,
when the backbone is Wi-Fi. Yeah.
So it just so happened when everybody hit it at the same time, we did get a little bit of a clocking on our browser, which was unfortunate, just because right at that moment, it's like we were, and that was part of the presentation, was that the internet's not real time,
right?
So if we're depending on the real timeness of the internet, sometimes that's not there for us. But this using web technology or mobile technologies like local storage and WebSockets, it certainly recovered as soon as our timing problems went away, but. That's the only thing I wish we had a little more bandwidth that we could do, but
it's difficult.
We brought it on ourselves.
Yeah, well, it's one of those limitations, right? It happens, and those kinds of things. That a network can easily be overwhelmed at that point, and so it's the backbone. What do you wish? Or no, let me ask before I ask you that question. Did you have a Q&A time? It's a very short 45 minutes they had here. What kind of questions did you get? What were most people asking?
It was amazing that the most of the questions that we got afterwards were, what kind of, of course they were asking some questions about the bandwidth, but they were like, the concerned or is curious about the fact that now I have a live socket open on my phone, for instance, and is that going to, do I have to worry about that drawing down my battery? They were talking about some applications that they've run this weekend that they said that because it's constantly pulling, and in this particular case, the web socket itself is not constantly pulling. It's kind of more of a listener, so it's not generating traffic over your phone. But I wasn't really, I guess I had never thought about that particular question, and that is this going to, am I going to draw down my battery?
Yeah,
because
it's a great question.
I have a real-time communication line open. But a lot of questions involved with the fact that, this, like with Angular Fire, I don't have to write the code to do the normal callback, event listening, the things that you normally, like in a JavaScript world, would have to worry about, because it's handling it, behind the scenes. And I can certainly see where some people would say, well, I don't want this going on behind the scenes all the time, because now I'm going to get, it's going to affect my data on my phone, And so I would say, I got like four questions on that afterwards, and they were all kind of on the traffic of it.
Sure.
And those are good, valid questions, which, I think, need to be addressed.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Those I wouldn't have thought until you said that, and this is why we consider this bonus content, right? I would not have thought of that. Like, wow, got to think about the battery.
Did the same thing. I was like, wow, that's really an interesting question.
Got to think through that. Like, all right, how much traffic is it generating, and is it coming from the, what's a phone doing to kind of do that? So very interesting. If you'd gotten 15 more minutes, they were 45-minute sessions. If you had 15 minutes more, or oftentimes the session speakers go, oh, you get done and you're like, oh, I was going to talk. Anything like that you want to throw back in there?
Well, I tried to be very careful in the way I worded the title of the course, because what I think, a lot of people were, since AngularJS has been such a hot topic, the actual content of our AngularJS was actually fairly abbreviated, because we just didn't have time. We had really 45 minutes to cover three major technologies. And as much exposure as AngularJS has in this conference, I thought, well, most everybody in the room will have probably either come from a class, or they're in a class, or they did maybe the all-day session Wednesday on it. when I asked if people had all been, what their exposure to AngularJS was, I found out that really there wasn't very much. So I think probably what happened at that point was that some of the people may have gotten lost because we were in code that it was like, well, I don't have time to really set this up. So I think if I had it all over to do again with the crowd that I had, I think I might have maybe raised it up a level because we got really down into code very, very quickly. And I'm not sure. I haven't heard any feedback yet. I've heard good feedback, but I think probably the main feedback is that maybe we weren't quite ready for some of that, but it was, be the first, I'll throw it out there that it was a complex topic.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So,
well, good.
And to try to cover it as quick as we could with the time that we had, I think we did a good job.
Yeah, I think sometimes the biggest complaints about conferences you don't get enough meat, and so maybe
we may have gotten maybe.
Well, that's good.
I mean, there's a
you never know.
I always figure there's some people in the room that's not,
Yeah, you can't.
You
with 150 people, you're gonna miss with some, and you're gonna hit it right on with others.
Absolutely.
But and being working for a survey research company, I like that idea, that demo that you have there, getting some real-time feedback.
Well, if you need an Avow Me application, let me know.
Well, when you were talking, honestly, when you were talking about that, it would be great. I would love as a podcaster. So, I podcast for Gallup as well. We call them webcasts there, but. One of the things, we have a chat room, right? And so I'm getting instant feedback through the chat room, and some of these places provide kind of that survey where you can quickly, and I would love, some of these services have it, but I'd love an integrated solution where you could have a chat going, and that's constantly updating, and then if a survey comes out, the screen would dynamically change, new survey, boom, and you would see it would changing, because I think with the angle you've got on this is, I think engagement goes up as people see it's actually doing something, right?
Yes.
And so it's like, I can influence that, and they can, or whatever, they can change that. And so in this situation, we would want to ask questions and have people come back and have those responses just changing in real time, kind of as we're going. I think the technology we've always, that's not a new idea, but it's been clunky up until now. I think it's getting a lot better, and maybe even easier for maybe a guy like me to stand up something like that on my own.
Sure. I mean, because now if you had the $100,000 technology that you could do that, I'm sure you could do it.
Yeah.
I always like if you ever done an online training course or with an instructor-led online, they have the ability to maybe pull a question or something, but up till now I've never seen that just available on a web page.
Yeah.
It's like, maybe I do have some sort of a live podcast going on, and I want to be able to add that. I mean, literally with just dozen or so lines of code, we have that ability now.
What's my back-end investment, though, in something like that? If I wanted to stand something like, if I wanted to do that on my own and I was going to stand something up like that, what's a solution for me to get into something like that? Hardware, software,
Yeah, but I mean, using the newer technology, just like Firebase, is very, very small. I would say. I mean, $49 a month buys you the intro level. That's all your web hosting. That's all your database. That's so you have no Oracle and running in the background. You have, sorry.
Yeah, no, it's good. We had to throw it in.
Somebody's going to come back on that one, but you have no Tomcat. You have no. All of the technologies that it takes now to build a web service for $49 a month, which is, I think, 400 connections. I can't remember the exact numbers.
Yeah.
And then you can go up from there.
Interesting.
I think, and it's production ready. And you don't have to. The point is that you don't have to build it yourself.
Sure. Well, I'll have to look into that, because that's a very interesting scenario for us to be able to get that as we do our podcast. We've got a great chat service. We use Chatwing to do that, but maybe add some more dynamic without necessarily having to make the investment in the infrastructure to get it running.
And I think that's what the whole point is, and maybe not hard to state it.
Yeah.
We're trying to get the infrastructure out of our lives.
Yeah.
Because as programmers, we don't like infrastructure. Right. As managers and product owners and customers, we just and really, how much of infrastructure is the same? 90%. What would we say? 85, 90% maybe. Doesn't change from company to company, but yet that's what we spend most of our time on.
Yeah, and duplicate along those lines as well. Well, Jim, thanks for taking a few minutes. I appreciate you doing that.
Thank you.
And at this point, we'll say, Jim, I'm going to get some information from you later that will populate in the YouTube video down right below the video here. Be available some information on what we talked about here. So head straight down below in the description, and there'll be some information there as well. Again, thanks again, Jim, for coming out. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.